Good afternoon or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is the wonderful June 5th, 2025. Come up this episode of the Crusty podcast. More information on the carbon gag tax and no names released. That's right. There's some gag orders going around that won't allow the PBO office to release information. And of course, nobody has any idea how many MPs or senators have colluded or allowed to be interfered with during our election process. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Ooh, the drama keeps unfolding. All that and more come up in the show, ladies and gentlemen. Please stick around. Listener viewer discretion may be advised. I may swear, I may smoke a cigarette, or make a rude gesture to some of our leaders. See you in a bit.
Hit it, sweetheart. Because I am hard, you will not like me.
Yes, sir.
There is no racial bigotry here. Here you are all equally worthless.
From Western Canada, this is the Crusty Canuck podcast, a Canadian veteran's point of view on political, social, economic issues and life. Here's Crusty.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You are back to episode 289 of the Crusty Canuck podcast. I'm your host, Crusty Canuck. Hope all is well. This episode is also brought to you in part and supported by the Veterans for Freedom Network. That's right, Stand 2, Veterans for Freedom. Link will be in my description. And coming soon, Veterans for Freedom TV. You'll be seeing like-minded individuals, other veterans, and other pro-freedom advocates and free speech advocates advertising their wares and doing their shows on Veterans for Freedom television. So stay tuned for that. I'm your host, Crusty Canuck. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming out. I know I said I have an episode this Friday, but I was just inspired to do an episode today. I'm off early for work, so I might as well share this with you, you wonderful people. My wonderful, wonderful fan base. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much. You guys are pretty well good to go. I want to say thank you last night to all the great comments I got. I had some audio issues on the machine again. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's because it was the rain or some static someplace. I don't know. I sent an email to the powers that be, i.e. the provider of this fine piece of equipment, and to the fine people at StreamYard and see what's going on. I did a test earlier. Everything seems to be fine. Everything seems to be plugged in the right places. I took an air canister to it, blew some things out, wiped this, clean that, blah, 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 blah. And make a long story short, let's hope the audio on this is satisfactory to your listening pleasure. Anyway, as the title card said, gag order on the carbon tax. So Alex Giroux, the PBO financial officer, was basically told not to speak his mind. Now, I do have an article here in the works I will put in my description for you, ladies and gentlemen. But when somebody who works for the Parliamentary Budget Office, okay, I think you should have more personnel there working on making sure that there's the finances and there's money there and everything else too, to make sure that there's money to keep this country going. However, our federal government, of course, in its infinite wisdom, does not want to share the information on what the PBO has really found. He more or less said that it's not beneficial to Canadians. It's robbing Canadians blind. Okay. Because we've all seen that video with Mr. Mark Harlan jumping up and down in Parliament saying, oh my God, if you take these kids in a road trip, the planet's burning. How dare you be inconsiderate? We've all seen the footage. I'm not going to put it up again, but you just how these liberals react. And they think this carbon tax is beneficial because they all keep saying 8 out of 10 people are getting money back for paying and for climate change. And yet there's 2 million people going to food banks, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't know where he gets this 8 out of 10 people, 8 out of 10 Canadians are doing better off. How the hell are we doing better off when things are more expensive? It's bloody obvious. Anyhow, I'm going to queue up a video here from Lauren Gunter, who basically gives his insight in regards to the ABCDs of carbon tax and just the buffoonery that has been bestowed on us in regards to that issue. So I'll queue up for that shortly. But as I ramble on here about our carbon taxes, no taxes is really good. Now, we all hear the adage about death and taxes, death and taxes. Those are the only two things that are certain in our lives. Yet when you're paying anywhere from 42 to 46, in some cases 51% of your income to taxes, something's not right. Something isn't right. Now, I've had people say, well, Crusty, you get a pension. That's taxes. Well, yeah, I've earned that. The Canada Pension Plan is taxes that goes into that to help people that worked 40, 50 years of their lives. So they got something to live off of, right? But even that's taxed too. So when you look at everything that has come in the name of taxation, we'll say the past 34 years, GST coming around 1990, because Brian Mulroney and his cronies spent a lot of money. So they put goods and services on everything, and then they up the ante on tobacco and liquor and fine things that people like to enjoy after a hard week's work. Okay? And now we all know the con with the federal government telling us the carbon taxes are good because we're fighting climate change. Well, what have we seen in the name of fighting climate change? Right? Have we seen ocean turbines that can generate hydroelectricity for coastal towns and cities? Have we seen any kind of turbine in the Great Lakes that can generate electricity? There's enough current in the Great Lakes that could do it, believe it or not, regardless of what kind of fishing rights are there or not, right? How many innovations have we seen? We saw this past winter, okay, especially in Alberta, how there was 8% of the grid that was relied on wind and solar. How did that wind fare? How did that solar fare? We had brownouts and blackouts because of it. Way to go, Motley Notley, you dizzy cow. Now, Mr. Nenshi wants to do the same thing. So how did that fare for the average Canadian? Now, I just paid last month's bill for my heat and hydro, my electricity and my gas. It was close to $400, ladies and gentlemen. And we did need a lot of gas, and we didn't need a lot of heat. Need electricity, of course. But then when you actually look at the carbon price, it was about $85, right? So it's costing Canadians. So how can the federal government say I'm getting more back when we're paying more out? And people forget that the carbon tax is not just for gasoline. It's for diesel. It's for turning your lights on, for using these fine machines, right? Because we're such terrible polluters. Anyway, I'll leave a link from Alex Giroux there too. There's a soundbite from Twitter where he basically says in committee that is not beneficial. It is not good for the Canadian worker. It is not good for anybody, right? And of course, the federal government's claiming that the carbon tax is beneficial. How is any tax beneficial unless we're getting ready for World War III? Interesting. You decide, ladies and gentlemen. It is just another shit show.
Stay updated and follow Crusty Canuck on Facebook, Twitter, Gab, Telegram, YouTube, and Podbean. Subscribe today and donate at crustycanuck.ca.
And you're back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 289 of the Crusty Canuck podcast. Carbon gag tax and no names released. That's right. Federal government refuses to release names of individuals that might have colluded or might have accepted or got some kind of payola or some kind of kickback or a slap and tickle from foreign influence. Now, ironically enough, the CBC actually did a pretty decent story on that today, and I will actually play this for you too. But I'll get back to Lord Gunter's report on the carbon tax issue. And ladies and gentlemen, you decide on it. Like I always encourage you to, you guys decide. You're not idiots, you're not morons. And I'm personally getting sick and tired of all these elected officials that keep calling us idiots and morons, or the way they speak to us, like Miss Freeland, right? So here's something from Lorne Gunter he did today for the Toronto Sun. And you guys decide on your own and formulate your own decisions as we should. All righty, let's cue it up. Here we go.
What are they hiding? Parliamentary Budget Officer Yves Giroux says that the federal government has an internal study that shows the carbon tax costs Canadians more than they get back in rebates. Now, almost every Canadian already thinks that. But the government has insisted, including as recently as this week, that 8 out of 10 Canadians get more in rebates from the federal government than they pay in carbon tax on their fuel. That's ridiculous. Because the effects of the carbon tax go way beyond putting gas into your tank or paying a carbon tax charge on the natural gas that heats your home. The carbon tax affects everything we buy that has to move to where we buy it. Take, for example, your groceries. It affects the truck that brings the groceries to the store. But it goes way back beyond that. Let's take meat, for example. It affects the cattle.
Since the implementation of the carbon tax, we've seen prices go up. Okay, so the emissions have risen because more people are getting mobile, more people are moving around. So you're going to have carbon. It's not that hard to figure out, federal government.
That have to be moved to the slaughterhouse before they are moved as meat to the grocery store. It affects the barley or whatever else is being fed, the corn that's being fed to the cattle before they are fattened up enough to move to the slaughterhouse. It affects all of the inputs for everything that we buy. And oh yes, you vegans who think we should all stop eating meat to save the planet because the cattle's methane emissions are ruining the climate. Yes, even your rutabaga costs money because of the carbon tax. The added inflation as a result of the carbon tax, I would peg at about 1/3. Because everything that goes to a manufacturer, that goes to a service company, everything that moves on a truck or on a train pays a carbon tax. And so, do I have any figures for that? No, but the government says that the carbon tax saves 1/3 of the emissions, and they have no numbers or figures for that either. Not even this secretive report that Yves Giraud says he has seen, but he's not allowed to reveal to you. They don't even have emissions numbers in that report. They cannot tell you, and they admit, the federal environment minister and his ministry admit, they don't even track how many emissions are being saved by the carbon tax. So they're adding all of this cost to Canadians. They're putting this big weight, this big drag on the Canadian economy, and they can't even tell you whether it's affecting emissions or not. It is utterly useless and unforgivable that they will not show Canadians their internal analysis of the economic impact of the carbon tax. But they know that as soon as they do, any political advantage that they get from the carbon tax will evaporate. Because maybe there are people out there who still believe that they get more in the rebate every quarter from the federal government than they pay in carbon tax. I checked ours out. We pay more in carbon tax on the natural gas that heats our home in January and February than we get in our quarterly rebates. That's how the carbon tax works. And when more and more Canadians understand, A, it's inflationary, B, it's a drag on the economy, C, they are not getting as much in rebates as they're paying in carbon tax, and D, the government can't even tell you whether the carbon tax is having a positive effect on emissions. When those four are clear, and they would be clear if the federal government would release this secret report, when that becomes clear, any pretense the Liberals have that the carbon tax is worthwhile evaporates. And for a party that's already on its way down, that's one more blow they can't withstand. That's why they're keeping it secret. For Post Media, I'm Lorne Gunter.
Yeah, that was Lorne Gunter from Post Media or Sun Media. And he makes a valid point. How have the emissions gone down? Well, what's there for us, ladies and gentlemen? What's there? Just more taxes, more debt, more BS. Excuse me, more chaos, right? More frustration. And yet the government keeps buttering us a poop sandwich saying, it's good for you. Please take a bite. Yeah, well, I got something they can take a bite of.
Stay updated and follow Crusty Canuck on Facebook, Twitter, Gab, Telegram, YouTube, and Podbean. Subscribe today and donate at crustycanuck.ca.
And you're back, ladies and gentlemen, to carbon gag tax. And my apologies. I didn't mean Alex Giraud is Yves Giraud. Pardon my français. Anyhow, he was basically told to keep his mouth shut or they won't put out his words of wisdom or his reports. Typical, right? Federal government has done so many nasty things in keeping things quiet, keeping us in the dark. So much for transparency in sunny ways, right? Anyhow, make a long story short, it's bullshit. It was bullshit when they promoted it. It's bullshit when they sat there and stomped their feet in Parliament. And it's bullshit now when it comes to our wallets and our day-to-day lives. Hey, liberals, leave us alone. Hey? And conservatives, if you get in, leave us alone. That's simple. Anyway, carrying on with this episode of 289. No names released. Yeah, the second part of this show. That's right. So the federal government refuses to release names because CSIS and the RCMP have written reports in regards to the federal interference the past couple of years now. That's been on a lot of people's minds. The interference with our elections, interference with decision-making. Now, ironically enough, the CBC did a pretty good story. I watched this earlier today, and I'm going to play this for you, and I want you all to listen to it carefully. And I'm really surprised that the CBC actually went this far, to basically bite the hand that feeds them, basically to shit where they eat kind of thing. But you, my wonderful audience, I want you to decide, especially my Americans and my British audience too. Please listen carefully and observe willingly. Of course, there's Miss Freeland there with her infinite wisdom and her fancy, god-awful sneakers. What the hell is she doing to her hair? Is she tweaking again? I don't know. We'll have to see. But ladies and gentlemen, you guys decide on this issue. I just... It's amazing how they do not talk about the names of certain MPs. And I bet you they're probably pretty close. And ironically enough, they have also mentioned some senators might be involved in this too, right? So, like I said last night, some of these senators are appointed. They're all appointed. They're not elected. So it gives you some really, really good insight. But you decide.
Needs to be law enforcement that takes the steps and takes the actions.
Canada's Deputy Prime Minister saying that it's up to police agencies to decide whether MPs broke the law. It comes after a parliamentary committee found that some parliamentarians wittingly aided foreign state actors such as India and China. Now, their names haven't been made public by the committee, but legislators say that there may be police investigations and details eventually released as part of that process. Joining us now is Kenny Chu. He's a former Conservative MP who lost his seat in the last election. Just earlier this year, the public inquiry found he may have lost it because of Chinese interference. He joins us now from Richmond, BC. Kenny, good to talk to you tonight.
Thank you for the privilege.
So this report finds that some parliamentarians, they use the word wittingly, helped foreign governments like China and India. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, we heard her say Liberals will deal with these allegations internally. But do you think that Canadians should know who these parliamentarians are?
I do, because without that, these are supposed to be representative of our citizens, our communities, and we need to know what is the background, what incentivized them in the aiding and abetting with these foreign countries. And without that, it is very difficult for democracy to function in an informed way. And because of that, I think the government has an obligation to disclose and let the Canadian knows who they are and why, under what circumstances.
Kenny, do you think you know who they are?
I had my own suspicion throughout the years of observation as just an ordinary Canadian. I have helped many politicians, and I have observed how certain regimes, certain countries, how they conduct their influence and how they get close and network with, and then later on make use of their relations and change their minds. And through these political leaders, perhaps also in turn change the heart and minds of diaspora communities and also other Canadians.
So you've got your suspicions. You're not naming names because there are suspicions.
Yeah.
But do you think it's an issue that's more a problem for one particular party, or is this across the board?
I think there are certain political parties that are more susceptible to these interference. Although none of the parties are completely removed and inoculated from these interference, because in the end, I'll use the Chinese Communist Party as an example. What they want is to get close to the heart and the center of power. So the closer a party is to power, the more likely they will try to infiltrate and try to get close and therefore influence the power. And so if you are, sixth or fifth ranking in the number of seats in House of Commons, perhaps you're probably more safe. But if you're first, second, or third, then you will likely get close and attempts to influence you.
These allegations come after reports that you may have lost your seat in the 2021 election as a result of Chinese interference. Do you think these new allegations against parliamentarians may have had something to do with your loss that year? And how do you feel about that?
Well, I've been telling everybody who's willing to listen that this is not about Kenny Chiu. This is about Canada, the democracy, the foundation of our society. And that NCCOP's report only tells us that, unfortunately, even Judge Hogue has not been given sufficient mandate or time to look into how deep and how wide foreign interference has been in Canada. The NCCOP had only solicited internal government agencies to conduct their hearing, and all the witnesses listed in the reports are basically MPs or ministers or government agencies. Unfortunately, that part of the foreign interference was not covered by the Judge Hogue's foreign interference inquiry, and I believe it was by design. It was trying to do a quick sweep it under the carpet kind of cover, and it's unfortunate because there are so many tentacles that these foreign countries, I'm not just pointing fingers at the Chinese Communist Party, but there are other that are trying to influence us as a multicultural society in the world.
Kenny, sure, I take your point. This is not just about Kenny Chiu, though you may have been directly affected by it. And as somebody who's an outsider, not part of this, hearing this, the idea that a sitting parliamentarian would willingly be active in this way, I mean, it sounds like something you'd see in a movie. So it may not be about you, Kenny Chiu, but what would you, Kenny Chiu, like to see done about this, given your experience?
I think we need to hold our elected officials to account, perhaps not only just elected officials, because senators are not elected, but their conducts also have to be held accountable. For example, why would senators, a couple of the senators, continue to spread disinformation about the Foreign Influence Registry, either proposed by the current Liberal government or the ones that I propose as anti-Chinese? The version that I proposed in 2021 did not even mention the word China or Chinese in there, but yet they continue to tell the diaspora community that people like myself or other parties are picking on certain diaspora community. That's just trying to fan the flame, and also for matching hates. And unfortunately, their attempts are actually making use of these diaspora community. Why are they doing that? The incentives, that's what I would like to hear. That's what I would like to give these public officials a chance to explain themselves.
Kenny Chiu, former Conservative MP, really good to talk to you tonight. Thanks.
And that was Kenny Chiu, former Conservative MP. I remember a couple of years ago him speaking out about the apparent interference. Now, Han Dong, out of Don Mills, he was actually kicked out of the Liberal caucus, but he still sits as an independent. So who knows? And Rebel Media did a couple of great stories in regards to certain Chinese police stations in the Greater Toronto area. So what's that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? Now, if there's a few MPs that knew what was going on and have had a slap and tickle for the pickle and some payola and a couple of senators, it puts things in perspective now, doesn't it? because we've all heard Prime Minister Trudeau love China's basic dictatorship, right? Yes, of course. And we're seeing an influx of a lot of Indian migrant workers who are demanding special rights and privileges, better work permits, better visas, just like that. So it makes you think. Now, ladies and gentlemen, don't get me wrong. This is nothing racial at all. I'm not being a racist by any means, but proof is in the pudding. Okay. And like I said earlier, they all wanted to butter us up a shit sandwich. And that's what it's turning into.
Stay updated and follow Crusty Canuck on Facebook, Twitter, Gab, Telegram, YouTube, and Podbean. Subscribe today and donate at crustycanuck.ca.
And you're back, ladies and gentlemen, to Crusty Canuck Podcast, episode 289, Carbon Gag Tax and No Names Released. I'm your host, Crusty Canuck. And thanks for sticking around this long, ladies and gentlemen. And if you want to donate, please consider donating too. Every little bit will help me on the way. If you like to hear what you see, click like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Share this all over your social media platforms too. And thank you out there to my new subscribers. I think there's a couple I had from Germany. They said hello last night. So thank you very much. Guten Tag. Thank you, my German friends. Round of applause for you out there too. All right. And I also want to thank everyone else who stuck around the last episode too, regardless of the audio issues I have had. But it's getting better. Like I said, I took this all apart, cleaned this, air hosed this, blah, 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 you name it. And I did it. Too many cigarettes. Anyhow, I've been Crusty Canuck on this beautiful 5th of June, 2024. I will have an episode this Friday. So hang on to your shorts for that too. Work days are going to make it shorter because cattle are going to market. So they're trying to find things for me to do. However, I'll keep busy, keep rocking and rolling. If I get extra time, I will make another podcast too, for you wonderful people out there. But it gives you something to think about how this government is really treating our tax dollars, what they're willing to do to garnish or to gain any kind of treadway for their favor, and how they're really treating us. So I would highly suggest that you write your senators and write your MP. I've said before numerous times, ladies and gentlemen, I think there's something in the works, and it doesn't look promising. Now, I'm not going to try to be a Donnie Downer here and try to rain in your parades, but I think something bad is going to happen, and we're going to be stuck in the middle with it, and we'll have to sort it out. That's just my best guess. That's my hypothesis over the whole situation. And, I'm actually impressed with CBC actually doing a decent story for once, right? But people are catching on to CBC's BS too with their executives and their bureaucrats and admins alike, laying people off and giving themselves little tickles here and there. And then even the Canadian taxpayer, which is going to stop abruptly, I think. But anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, I have been Crusty Canuck on this beautiful 5th of June, 2024. Weather is getting better. We had a bit of a windy day today, so work was kind of odd. Nevertheless, I'm home early, so I'm going to prepare a meal for my wife and I and do some yard work and take advantage of the sunshine while we still have it. Oh, doom and gloom, eh? Oh, my goodness. Anyway, do what you can, help you in these trying times. Be courteous. Try to be as kind as you can. And if you want to donate to the show, please donate to the show. Every little bit helps too. Links in the description there for you to follow. And I'll see you Friday. And like I always say, ladies and gentlemen, humanity and merit wins the day. Take care, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.
Hit it, sweetheart. Because I am hard, you will not like me. Yes, sir. There is no racial bigotry here. Here you are all equally worthless.
This has been another episode of the Crusty Canuck Podcast. Stay sane and thank you for listening. From Western Canada, this is the Crusty Canuck Podcast.
Well, smack my ass and call me Judy.